there's just some things I can't stand, so.
Can't eat a burger.
I eat burgers, but I don't put all that crap on them. Yeah. Just, no, I eat a lot of different things. Like, I will never eat sushi.
Oh.
Yeah, I figured you people would start yakking about the sushi.
You ever tried it?
Yes, I've tried it. It was gross.
Try balut.
Yeah.
Do you eat seafood though?
Yeah, I like seafood, but I just can't stand sushi.
It's not raw seafood,
It
right?
needs to be cooked. All right, so here's how your brain makes sense out of stuff. Okay, so these are how your neurons are located. This up here, this is going to show you what's called the association areas. So the easy way to remember this is that these tracks, okay, so the association tracks only associate with their side. So this is only right side communication and only left side communication. You're not going to have fibers going from the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain, or from the top of the brain down to the bottom of the brain into the spinal cord. So the association tracks are only specific to the hemisphere in which they're located. So if you're in the right hemisphere, you're only going to stay in the right hemisphere. If you're in the left, you're only going to stay in the left. So this is how your sensory homunculus, okay, can communicate the information to the sensory association area that then communicates to the motor, that then gives it to the precentral gyrus. So these are your association tracks. So if you think of two easy words to remember that, just think of same side. Okay, same side. Only stay on their same side. You don't leave. Then you have your question. Then you have your what are called your projection tracks. The projection tracks, these are the vertical tracks, and these go from top to bottom. So when I talk about the tracks that signal from your brain down to your spinal cord, these are the ones that I'm talking about. So the projection tracks go from top to bottom and bottom to top. All right, so this is vertical. These will decussate. Okay, these will cross over to the other side. So what happens here is now you're going to have the information coming in. This is over here is going to be your left side. Oh, sorry, this is your right side, this is your left side. So the info comes down and it can cross over in the medulla, it can cross over in the pons, it can cross over in the thalamus, it can cross over in the midbrain. It just depends on what specific track we're talking about. And when we talk about the spinal cord, this will make a little bit more sense. So when you see this word, corticospinal, right, it ends in the word spinal, so that's how I know it's motor. Cortico tells you where it's coming from. So this just means the cortex. Okay, so from the outer portion of the brain, the cortex, it's going to travel down to the spinal cord, and then it's going to decussate down in here. So like I said, it could be the pons, the medulla, or up in the thalamus, where that decussation actually takes place. Okay, so your projection tracks decussate, and they go from top to bottom. All right, so any questions on that?
They only go from top to bottom?
Top to bottom, bottom to top. Okay, those are projection tracks. And then tracks that cross over to the other side and stay within the brain. All right, this is how your left side communicates with your right side in terms of the hemispheres. So if you commiserate with somebody, you're talking back and forth. All right, you could be whispering or you could just be talking. All right, but that just means left side to right side. In the middle of your brain, you have this thing here that looks like a C. And it's a very thick, white, myelinated region, and it's called the corpus callosum. At the very ends of the corpus callosum, you have these regions that are called the anterior commissure and the posterior commissure. All those are just the little ends of where the corpus callosum finishes. When we do the brain dissection, you're going to see that where the longitudinal fissure is, once you take the meninges out and stuff, you'll see that you're going to slice through that with the scalpel, but you're going to have to go further in to be able to fully separate that brain. So the first little bit of the brain is not held together from left to right. The thing that holds your brain together, the glue, is this region right here. That's the corpus callosum. And so all of that are just myelinated tracts that go horizontal. So they'll go from left to right, left to right, left to right.
So that way you can kind of split it apart at in the middle?
Yeah.
Kind of like look at it without any time to cut it?
Right. I mean, you can do this. Okay, you can look down. You'll probably see a little white thing. But you can't go all the way in because this is holding it together. Right? So those are your commissural tracts. So commissural tracts are left to right, right to left in the hemispheres.
Now,
So that's how your hemispheres
is
talk.
it true that women have bigger corpus callosum than men? Because isn't that That's why we're not better at multitasking?
They find differences, but sometimes when they make these big general statements, you know, you're always gonna find the exceptions, so I don't really
There's really
pay up a
no
lot of
It's
attention.
so
studies
bad
shown to
you
prove
can't-
that.
There's no
So-
such thing as multitasking.
There isn't any. It doesn't have to be
Like what?
Even, well, here's the multitasking thing, okay? You're still doing one thing at that specific moment and then quickly can move to the other thing. All right, but you have multiple stimuli coming at you, but in the end, you're still gonna end up doing one thing, all right? Now, your ability to handle the stress from that, okay, that's what I think distinguishes people. So, if you're gonna work in the ER, you better be good at that. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, so that's how your brain talks. So this, you guys, I'm not gonna test you on this, but I just wanna show you what your gray matter in the outer portion of your cortex looks like. So that's what these different layers are in here, all right? And you'll notice that the shapes of the cells are a little bit different depending on where you're looking. So here you have these little pyramidal cells, here you have bigger ones. They're called pyramidal because the somas look very triangular, right? And all these do is they communicate information from the top down to the bottom, and then from the bottom back up to the top. That's all they do, all right? And this layer here is only a few millimeters thick on the outer portion of the brain. If you guys want to measure that when we do the brain section, you can. But this is what the outer gray matter looks like, okay? This is the piece that they often say you're only using 10% of your brain. Well, no, you're not, okay? So that's what this stuff looks like. So that's where pyramidal cells come from, and if you guys hear those again, this is what they're talking about. And so these are the cells that are involved in those projection tracks that we just went through. But again, I'm not going to test you on those individual ones. It really doesn't matter that much. I'm not going to, of course, describe them all. Okay, then yesterday I told you guys that you had nuclei in your brain. And nuclei, basically what these things are clusters of somas, right? And these clusters are going to be areas where you're going to not have a lot of myelin, because somas are myelin. And what they're doing is they're processing information, right? So what you'll see here, this is a diagram, and then this is the actual brain. This stuff right here, it looks a little bit darker gray. Those are nuclei, okay? Those are regions where you have those dark areas. So when I talked about the substantia nigra and the red nucleus, right, that is what you would see if you were to slice off that top of the midbrain and stain it properly. That's what would be there. This here is just the superior view, so you did a transverse cut and now you're looking down on the brain, and that's what you're seeing on there, all right? So for example, this thing here is we have an owl, all right? But these little holes here are just these gaps here that are where the ventricles are. And yesterday you learned that your ventricles are where you make the cerebrospinal fluid. So you can imagine if one of these guys gets blocked, these nuclei are going to be affected in terms of what their function are. And you're going to have symptoms specific to what those inhibitions are because of the pressure that it's putting on there. So that's all the basal nuclei. And I'm not going to go through and make you guys memorize what every single one is. There's a class at ASU that you can take or at any of the colleges. It's called physiological psychology, and they go through every single one of these, and you learn about every single one of the connections that it's making, and it's pretty intense. So I want to do that, go for it. Right? For my purposes, I'm happy that you know what a basal nuclei is. Right. Okay. Now we'll get to the limbic. Right? And then these are the three parts of the limbic system that I want you to learn. The cingulate gyrus, the hippocampus, and what's called the amygdala. Right? As you can see, there are a whole bunch of other parts to it. Right? But I just want to point these out. So when you look at what the limbic system is, okay, it's this overlapping region of the brain. Over here is what I just showed you guys in terms of what the different sections are when you look at it and separate it. Here is where everything starts to kind of mesh together. And look how much of the limbic system is tied to that premotor cortex, which is over here, sorry, the prefrontal cortex. That is where your judgment, impulse control, all that stuff, that's all right here. So this is what takes the longest to develop. And so what happens here is also going to be mediated through what's happening in these other areas. So the cingulate gyrus is basically this thing right here that surrounds the corpus callosum. The amygdala is this little kind of teardrop looking thing, and then this is the hippocampus. It's kind of like a big, I don't know, sort of like a myosin head, but maybe more like a golf club. Like a little kid's golf club. You know, big heads. So this is the limbic system. Okay? What the limbic system is for is your emotion, and then very important in terms of learning. All right? Very tied into that. So how you learn and what you're feeling as you learn is going to really help in terms of you retaining that particular memory. All right? So what I try to do with you guys is to not stress you out too much, even though it's a 6-week class and I know I've ruined your summer, but that's just kind of how this class went. But hopefully you guys have had a fun experience in here and I've given you good quirky ways to remember stuff, and that ties in to what this is like. Okay, if you came in here and you knew all I was going to do was yell at you every day and get mad and, you know, have an environment that just felt really hostile and unwelcoming, I don't think you'd have an easy time learning. All right, so to me, what you guys do here, that's yours. All right, I know what I got to do, so that's what I do. But it's up to you if you're going to, you know, study more, study less, that sort of stuff. I've never understood that when college teachers yell at their students. I'm like, what are you doing? Okay. So these are the three, again, that I want you to learn: your amygdala, cingulate gyrus, and your hippocampus. And the amygdala, this one's the fear, okay? So amygdala, I always remember, is like angry or fear. And one of the things that they're starting to find is that a lot of individuals who are coming back from the war that have PTSD have had a lot of activity here in the amygdala region. And it's tied directly to how that occurred in terms of the mixture with the epinephrine and norepinephrine from the adrenal gland in the fight or flight response. So when you're combining those chemicals, and also the ones that are stimulating the amygdala region, like, you know, the glutamic acid and the other brain neurotransmitters, this is creating different memories for individuals. Okay, the ones that are receiving it in that manner are the ones that are then going to have more issues with the PTSD. The ones that aren't having as much of a target with the adrenaline, okay, with your epinephrine or norepinephrine, when this is receiving information, are not having those kinds of issues. So they're actually starting to see how the brain chemistry is really playing a role in this. But you have some pretty big memories that will come into this with more activity with the amygdala. Then the cingulate gyrus, this one here is going to be more with mental conflicts, resolving things. So when you're processing information, you got something going on, you really got to figure out, okay, what am I going to do about this, right? That is where your cingulate gyrus is really working hard. And you can see that that is tied directly and overlaps into where that judgment and your prefrontal cortex is located, right? So that's a big thinking area. And then the hippocampus, this is kind of like to think of the happy memories. So the hippocampus, let me just go back to this picture here. I have it up here. Anyway, the hippocampus, you guys remember, it goes like this, right? You can see it on your slides. So that region passes through that area where you're actually, where your auditory cortex is located, and then also where your visual association area is located. So there's a lot of information that's going to be coming into there in terms of what you're seeing and what you're hearing as well. So I just picked out 3 little areas. There are people that spend their entire lives studying only the amygdala, or only the hippocampus, okay, or only the limbic system. Like, that's their job. All right, so lots of work being done in there, but it's pretty interesting how all these things tie together. But again, it's all about the neurotransmitters and how they're firing and what they're doing, and then what kind of connections you're making to that.